Hey guys, Mr.B here. So today I've got this 91 Acura Integra. I'm going to show you guys how to fix a misfire for $0. Well, actually, almost free. Technically speaking, I do have money invested in, of course, the tools. I'm not going to replace any actual car parts on this. The only thing I'm really going to need is a multimeter, some basic hand tools, a little bit of sandpaper, and some dielectric grease. Going a little bit, not too terrible. On a cold startup, it would stumble, it would die, it would misfire, and then when I put it in drive and move it around, sometimes it actually kills itself and it dies out. So little history on this vehicle. I had it parked for the winter and I would pull it in and out of the garage to get other cars in and out. And on cold startups, what the PCMs and the ECMs on these vehicles are designed to do is dump a ton of fuel into the engine on a cold startup to get it to warm up and get it to fire up. And then as it warms up, the spark plugs get hot enough to where they kind of start to clean themselves a little bit. And if the engine never gets up to operating temperature, the spark plugs are going to fall out. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to go ahead and pull out all the spark plugs. I'm going to check the ignition wires. Oh, you can hear it now, it's definitely misfiring a lot worse. I'm going to clean them up, I'm going to gap them, I'm going to see what they look like. Sometimes the spark plugs themselves just go bad. But on a vehicle that's been started and idled just for a few seconds here and there on cold startups, especially in the winter time, it's definitely going to follow out those spark plugs. So here's all the tools I'm going to use. I really don't even need the multimeter, but I'm going to use it anyways. I'll show you guys that here in a minute. I've got my 5/8 spark plug socket, extension, ratchet, spark plug gapper, a wire brush. Could also use some sandpaper. I might grab that if I need it, and some dielectric grease. So first things first, I'm gonna pop out all these ignition wires. Now you do want to be somewhat mindful of where these go, because if you put them in the wrong spot when you're done, you will have a misfire on at least 2 cylinders. Spark plug socket, fish down in the hole, take out all my spark plugs. So there's one spark plug coming out of there. It really looks black and sooty. I'll try and zoom in on it here. You can really see how much soot is on there and carbon buildup. Like I said, that is mainly from cold startups in the winter time. I never really had this up to operating temperature for very long. So just for reference, this is my spec sheet here. A lot of cars don't have this anymore, but older cars do. It actually tells us our spark plug gap right here. So spark plug type, NGK, part number, plug gap, 1.1 millimeters. And then for the plugs, I'm just gonna go ahead and really clean these up really good. A little bit of sandpaper also does the trick as well. Just kind of get it in between the gap there. Really, that's about as good as I'm gonna get this. You can clearly see that it's much cleaner. The main thing is you wanna make sure that the main electrode and the ground electrode are nice and clean in between the gap. That's really where the spark occurs, is in between there. You can compare the clean one versus the, of course, old one that I haven't cleaned yet. The way that these spark plug gappers work is you've got thousandths of an inch on this side, and then you've got millimeters on this side. So the spark plug gap is supposed to be at 1.1 millimeters right there. So I'm gonna go ahead and check that. I just take the spark plug gapper, put it between the gap, and then figure out where it wants to stop. Okay, so right now, it looks like this is actually at 1.0 millimeters. So it's a little on the tight side. It could be a little, the gap could be a little bit wider. So I'm gonna go ahead and push this towards 1.1. Now, if the gap is too big and you need to make it smaller, what I like to do is just take the end of the spark plug and tap it on something solid like this bench vise. Just tap on it like that. Two guys, these copper plugs, they are meant to be gapped. You are supposed to check this on a somewhat regular basis, clean them, gap them, put them back in if they're still good, or just replace them. You're supposed to check them before you put them in on a new plug as well. Newer style plugs, iridium, platinum, double platinum plugs, those plugs, you can check the gap on them, but you're not really supposed to shove the gapping tool between the gap on that spark plug, because it could potentially damage the electrode. If the electrode is super worn down and corroded and broken, it's really not worth it to clean these and gap them and put them back in. So now I got my spark plugs ready to go back in. I'm gonna go ahead and thread them in, get them tightened up. You really want to make sure that you give these a good snug, really put a little forearm strength in it, but you also don't want to over tighten them too much. You really just want to tighten them until they feel like they want to stop. Alright, so now I got my multimeter out, and I'm going to do this one at a time, but I've got my spark plug wire unhooked, of course, on this end, and then on this end. I'm going to use my meter to check resistance. Typically, per 1 foot of spark plug wire, you should see anywhere from 5 to 10,000 ohms. With this being about a 2-foot wire, I should see anywhere from 10 to 20,000 ohms of resistance. So I'm just going to stick 1 meter lead on the end right there. And then my other meter lead on this end right here. And we're at 12.6 kilo ohms, which is 12,600 ohms. That's exactly where I want it to be. So I'm gonna go ahead and check the other wires. Obviously, the shorter they get, the less resistance they should have, but it should be somewhere in that 5 to 15,000 range for these shorter ones. All right, so I've checked all my wires. They're all good. I've got these ones already plugged in. Like I said, I do this one at a time. That way I don't lose track of which wire goes where. What I like to do is put a dabble of dielectric grease just on the inside of that spark plug wire. Just like that. What that does is it prevents corrosion and helps give that spark plug wire a nice clean connection on the spark plug. The other thing too is you really want to make sure these spark plug wires are pushed in all the way. If they're not pushed in all the way, you're going to have a misfire. The other thing I like to check too, and I'll do this while I'm at it, is the contacts on the distributor cap and the rotor in the middle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop these screws loose. I'm going to pull the distributor cap off and take a look at the inside. If I need to clean the contacts, I will. So you can see on the inside of this distributor cap, there's quite a bit of corrosion from moisture and just kind of some wear and tear. That is very, very common to see that, especially in areas where there's a lot of humidity and when a vehicle sits as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my sandpaper and clean up those contacts where the rotor passes by. And right here on the end of the rotor, I'm going to clean that up as well. Now, technically speaking, I could replace all of these parts, you know, do a full tune-up on this and do new spark plugs, wires, cap, and rotor. But my goal here is to do this and fix this for $0 out of my pocket. Of course, not including the supplies that I already have laying around and the tools. So I got it all cleaned up in there. Those contacts are looking a lot better, a lot cleaner, nice, smooth, clean surface. There's one extra screw there on the bottom that I had to take loose, but it didn't really need to come all the way out. All right, so I've got it all back together. It's running really good, running really smooth here at idle. No spits, no sputters. Doesn't feel like it's hopping around, so I'm gonna go ahead and take this for a test drive, really beat on it a little bit and see how it runs. Well, it runs and drives a heck of a lot better than it did before. It doesn't really stumble, it doesn't really die on me anymore. It really runs a lot better. Could it run better than it does now with some new parts? Probably, but that definitely fixed the misfire for the time being. Hope you guys found this video helpful. Please go ahead and like and subscribe.